Hi, everyone, and welcome to Unlocking the Potential of All Learners, UDL Secrets in Brightspace. I'm Alex Walters, and this presentation had support from my colleague, Brittany Smalls. We're from the Center for the Advancement of Teaching and Learning at USC, and today we're excited to share how Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, can help you create more inclusive, engaging, and accessible learning environments using Brightspace. So whether you're new to UDL or looking to deepen your practice, we hope you'll leave today with practical strategies, inspiration, and a look at how a faculty development course can support instructors at your institution. Here's what we'll cover in this presentation. First, we'll introduce you to the UDL framework, what it is, where it comes from, and why it matters. Then we'll explore how Brightspace supports UDL through specific tools and strategies. We'll also walk you through a real-world example from a faculty development course at MUSC that modeled UDL principles and frameworks. And finally, we'll wrap up with key takeaways and resources that you can leave and start using right away. So what is Universal Design for Learning? Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, was developed by CAST, which is the Center for Applied Special Technology. It's a framework grounded in neuroscience and learning science that helps us design learning environments that are flexible and inclusive from the start. UDL is not about creating separate accommodations for learners. It's about designing for variability. It's about anticipating the diverse needs of learners and building in options that can support everyone. Think of it like designing a building with ramps and elevators, not just stairs. Everyone benefits from thoughtful, inclusive design. So CAST UDL guidelines are organized around three core principles: engagement, the why of learning, how we motivate and sustain interest; representation, the what of learning, how we present our information and content; and then action and expression, the how of learning, how students demonstrate what they know. These principles are supported by checkpoints that offer specific strategies. You do not have to use them all. Start with one or two that make sense for your course and build from there. So to go a little further on what is Universal Design for Learning, this is a quote that we really appreciated when we were designing our presentation and thought it would be good to include. So UDL isn't about erasing differences to make a one-size-fits-all lessons and assessments. It's about recognizing barriers, naming them, highlighting them, celebrating them, and designing for them. So again, UDL at its core is inclusive design. How do we start to design and recognize barriers so that everyone feels included in their learning? I want to follow up with another quote. And again, this really resonated with us. So this is from the Taylor Institute for Teaching and Learning at the University of Calgary. UDL involves the incorporation of a variety of approaches in order to engage learners in an inclusive curriculum that values diversity. We felt this was really important because, again, it uses the words inclusive and diversity. And again, UDL is at its core important for valuing inclusion and creating diversity and thinking about how everyone can be a part of their learning, both on the instructor side and the student side. So why does it matter? No two learners are the same. Students bring different backgrounds, abilities, languages, and learning preferences. So UDL helps us move from a one-size-fits-all model to a flexible, inclusive approach that can support everyone. This is especially important in online and hybrid learning, where barriers may not be recognized or they can potentially be amplified because of the type of context that students are in. So let's explore a little further the three pillars of UDL. So engagement is about how we spark interest and keep students motivated. It includes offering choice, building community, and reducing anxiety. Representation is about how we present content. Are we using multiple formats, text, video, visuals, audio? And are we making content accessible to everyone? And then action and expression is about how students show what they know. Are we giving them options beyond traditional methods? These pillars are all interconnected. When we design with them in mind, we create more inclusive and effective learning experiences. So moving to Brightspace and how it supports UDL strategies. Brightspace offers several tools that support engagement, which is pillar one of the UDL framework. First, badges and awards can be used to recognize progress and effort, not just achievement. This helps sustain motivation. Announcements can be personalized with video or audio to create a sense of presence and connection. And you can also use release conditions to create personalized learning paths. Students can unlock content based on their progress or interests. All of these tools help us build community, support learner autonomy, and ultimately keep students engaged. Moving on to representation, Brightspace supports multiple content formats. You can embed videos with captions, provide transcripts, and use alternative text for images. The accessibility checker helps ensure your content meets accessibility standards. You can also offer downloadable formats like PDFs or EPUBs for offline access. These strategies help students access content in ways that works best for them, whether they have a learning preference, they're English language learners, or they use an assistive technology. And then finally, pillar 3, action and expression. Brightspace also supports multiple ways for students to demonstrate their learning. You can allow flexible assignment submissions, so students might submit a video, audio file, or written response. You can use rubrics to clarify expectations and support self-assessment. And along with that, you can also use the peer review tool, which encourages collaboration and reflection. E-portfolios can also let students curate and reflect on their learning over time. So these options give students more control and help them express their learning in ways that ultimately align with their strengths. So I want to move on to the case study and talk about how we modeled UDL in a real-world setting. So at MUSC, we developed a faculty development course focused on digital accessibility in UDL called the Foundations of Inclusive Teaching. The goal was to help faculty not only understand these principles, but also apply them in their own teaching, whether that was online or in person. So we intentionally embedded UDL strategies throughout the course. For example, we sent weekly email communications to keep participants engaged and on track, supporting that engagement pillar. We provided alternative versions of content like EPUB, audio, and immersive reader formats to support representation. We allowed video or audio-based discussion posts, giving participants flexibility in how they express their learning. And we used simple, consistent language and terminology to reduce cognitive load and support clarity. These weren't just add-ons, they were baked into the course design from the beginning, and that made a real difference in how faculty experienced the material, and we ultimately modeled it throughout the course. So now I'm going to stop sharing slides, and I'm going to actually jump into a demo of the course so you can get an idea of how the course was designed and a few of the other strategies that we baked into the course. So this is the Foundations of Inclusive Teaching course at MUSC. So the first thing I'd like to mention is the fact that we did include a course design and instructional strategies page. So from the jump, faculty members knew exactly what strategies we were modeling based on UDL pillars and then also digital accessibility considerations. So this is something they could look through so they got a better idea of what to expect as they advance through the course, and the idea that we were actually modeling all of these strategies that are part of this page. I'm going to move to a module so we can discuss the layout. So part of UDL and engagement is making sure that you have a consistent design and layout. So each module started with a consider this section. So essentially this sets the stage. It helps recall information from a previous module. So again, it increases that engagement and really gets them motivated to start to learn the information. Also part of this, in relation to the web content accessibility guidelines and digital accessibility, it created a predictable and concise layout so participants knew what to expect each week. Something else I wanted to mention also is at the beginning of the module, we had an approximate completion time. So essentially this would help learners or the faculty members kind of self-regulate their time. So they knew exactly how much time potentially a module would take. Because it was self-paced and an asynchronous course, they could budget their time, which again relates back to that motivation pillar, which is so important as well. And then finally, there's a couple other things I wanted to show, which is one being the knowledge check. So you have this action and expression piece that kind of goes into here. So they're able to kind of while this is pre-designed, they were still able to demonstrate their knowledge one way, and then the assignment gave them another way, which I'll show you shortly. Again, this also hits that engagement pillar. So that is also so important because they have moved through the content. Now it's time to demonstrate what they know. But ultimately, again, we're working to keep them engaged after they've moved through the actual content for the module. And then the action and expression pillar is really on display here. So this is just an example of Module 2, but every assignment had this. So basically was by the time they got to this part of the module, they have reviewed the module content, and then they had some options to choose how they wanted to display their work. So they could, in this case, they could do a digital concept map, they could do a hand-drawn concept map. It gave them information on how to actually create it and then submit it. So essentially it walked them through each part of the assessment so they knew what to expect. We also included a tips for success section, and this called to each one of the UDL pillars. So it talked about engagement and choosing the format that you felt comfortable with to express your understanding. Representation, to use clear and specific examples for the assignment. So how do you plan to represent it? So again, they were giving the UDL pillars back to us. And then finally, action and expression. So how do we didn't put a lot of guardrails around what they could or couldn't do. We wanted to encourage creativity as long as they were creating the concept map and hitting on some of the main ideas from the module. So again, that action and expression part is really important here. And then finally, representation is all baked into this, but I wanted to mention that we included several things. Obviously, we included some H5P activities, which helps with representation. We obviously have some text work. There are also several links that went outside the course that provided simulations on what to expect around disabilities. And again, this was just for Module 2. But we had different types of media. So we did have videos and audio clips that were available as well. So we made a point to be sure that we had a variety of formats for learners to engage with through that representation pillar. So again, each module was designed similarly that led up to that assignment where they could demonstrate what they knew through different formats and having autonomy and choice in how they demonstrated their knowledge. So I'm going to jump back to the presentation now. So I want to talk a little bit about feedback. So the feedback we received was incredibly encouraging. And as you can see, faculty shared that the course helped them see accessibility in UDL not as checklists, but as design mindsets. One participant said, I appreciated the opportunity to make the concepts of UDL and digital accessibility more concrete. Another shared, I really enjoyed the simulations in order to empathize with our students that may have disabilities. And several mentioned how helpful the weekly emails were in keeping them engaged and organized. I think these reflections show that when we model UDL, we don't just teach it, we help others feel it. And ultimately, I think that's a very powerful thing in the work that we do. So what are the key takeaways from this presentation? First, UDL is inclusive design. It's about designing for variability, not for the average. Second, Brightspace supports UDL through tools in many ways like multimedia, announcements, flexible assessments, and these accessibility features. And third, you do not have to do everything at once. Start small. Add one new strategy. You may call it your +1, which is a resource I'll reference in just a minute. So maybe it's about offering a second format for a reading or allowing students to choose between a written or video response. These small changes can have a huge impact, and over time they build a more inclusive, engaging learning experience for everyone. So we've included some resources to support your next steps. First is the CAS UDL guidelines, which we discussed. They're a great place to start, and they're practical and research-based. Second is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG. They help ensure your materials meet accessibility standards. So everything that you want to know about digital accessibility and why that is so important and standards around that, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines are going to be an excellent resource. We used a quote from Novak Education, but it goes much further. They have UDL training and resources. And then finally, I briefly mentioned the +1. That strategy is something we discussed in the course, but It is a fantastic book called Reach Everyone, Teach Everyone. It's a great read, and it talks about that +1 strategy, which I highlighted both in this presentation and in the course. So these tools can help you continue exploring and applying UDL in your own context. So I want to thank everyone for watching this virtual Fusion session. We hope you're leaving with ideas and inspiration to make your courses more inclusive and engaging. If you're interested in connecting, here's our contact information. We'd love to hear how you're using UDL in your own teaching or support your next steps. Again, I appreciate you watching the presentation, and everyone take care. Thank you.